have the registration on the first floor, and it's a little trip up here. So we're going to go ahead and get started already. Welcome everybody. My name is Jesus Gonzalez. I'm the Resource and External Relations Specialist for APS here in San Antonio. And I would like to welcome you to the Disparities in Care of Hispanics with Alzheimer's Disease Conference for 2015. So on behalf of the Regional Director, who can't be with us today for APS, Ms. Joanne Tobias Molina, welcome to the conference and welcome to our home, our building. This is the APS building. So welcome to the conference as well. We hope you enjoyed today's conference, and we hope that you take away the importance of having proper care for people with this type of disease. Now a little bit in Spanish. Mi nombre es Jesus González y trabajo con el Departamento de Protección a los Adultos. Me gustaría bienvenirlos a todos a esta conferencia y al edificio y la casa de APS. De parte de la Directora de Servicios a los Adultos, Ms. Joanne Tobias Molina, que no pudo estar aquí con nosotros, bienvenidos a la conferencia y bienvenidos a nuestra casa. Deseamos que les guste la conferencia y que aprendan la importancia de tener el propio cuidado para la gente con esta enfermedad. So a little bit with housekeeping, and I think you guys are mostly familiar. We do have a break room across the hall where we have some coffee and some pastries. Restrooms are just down the hall in this main hall. If you go down, they're going to be on your right. If they're filled up, if you go further down the hall by the elevators, there's a water fountain. You have some more restrooms on that point. For lunch, we do encourage that everybody stay within walking distance here because of the parking situation. Because if you leave, you might come back and there might be no parking space, and you might have to park across the street somewhere. So there's Jack in the Box within walking distance. There's also Mi Rancho, which is a Mexican restaurant. There's J. Anthony Seafood, also walking distance across. And then of course we have a food truck that's going to be in the parking lot right in the front as you came in. I think it's Cheesy Jane's. They have a variety of plates that you can go ahead and order and then bring it back up here if you need to. So again, welcome to the conference, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. My name is Joe Zapata. I think a few of you heard of me. I sent you emails. Plenty of emails. Probably a couple of you already put me in spam already. But I'm going to win you back for this conference and put you back in the inbox. For now on, please use that back door as the primary entrance and exit. And this is the home of the APS, and they're not kidding. This is the room they sleep in at night. And we get up in the morning and walk across the hallway to their offices. So, welcome. My name, again, is Joseph Zapata, and I work for the University of Texas Health Science Center, South Texas Geriatric Education Center, and that's a part of medicine, Department of Medicine, Division of Psychiatry. And why are we here? We're here because of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is a devastating disease which affects individuals and destroys families, and we're here to combat that. In 2010, the NAPA was instituted, the National Alzheimer's Project Act, and it was an association between government agencies, including the VA, the MHA, the FDA, and HRSA, got together and decided to form a collaboration to stop Alzheimer's. And one of those parts was to educate the field which interacts with the elderly population. And that's why we're here today, to teach you all about Alzheimer's, all the way from the basics, all the way to the more technical aspects. And we have a great crew of speakers coming in today to teach you all about that, especially the renowned Dr. Jason Schillerstrom, which you might be familiar with and you might have heard of before. So let's talk about paperwork real quick. How many of you here are seeking CEUs of any type? Sounds great. Okay, awesome. In your folder, you have a stapled section, which is the statement of attendance form. On page 2, which is back to page 1, is your CEU form, and you'll be turning that into me at the very end of the conference. I was very specific on this in the emails. You must attend 100% of the conference to obtain credit. Make sure you put down which CE you want, which type of credit you want, and make sure you put the email address. That's the email I'll be sending you your certificate to. I'm going to send you an online evaluation. You fill out the evaluation, and the instant you do, I'll process it, and then I'll email you your certificates of your choice, whichever you select. It's going to be about a 2-day turnaround process, depending on who and how many of each person wants what. So if everybody here is a social worker and everybody wants social work credits, give me about 3 or 4 days to process that. Other paperwork that's important is your DVD order form. If you like what you see and you want to see it again, you want to spread the word, you can definitely order a videotape. I'm going to do a video of this conference along with the PowerPoints that will be displayed and a couple of photos of the event today. And you can order a couple for yourself and a couple for your friends. And another form that we are looking at is the person profile form. It's this form with the green lettering at the bottom. This is a demographic profile. It's completely voluntary. You can put as much or as little information as you wish. What this form does, it helps us obtain grant monies to provide conferences just like this. People in the past have filled out this form, and we have been granted grant monies to provide this conference. So maybe in the future you can do it for future conferences that you might attend. That's why this conference is free to attend, and we're able to supply all these goodies for you at no cost to you. And is there anything else I got to cover? I think that's about it. Does anyone have any questions pertaining to CEUs? Yes, ma'am.
I don't see the RN as a thing to check off.
That's continuing nursing education. That's CNE. Do you have any lawyers in here? Okay, I was going to tell you to leave. Okay. Yeah?
CNE is not listed on here.
Oh.
CNE is not listed.
CNE is not listed on? Hold on.
So we just make our own box? Hopefully.
How many nurses have got here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, originally nursing was not provided for this conference. It was never issued as a CEU. Usually I do, but not this particular one. However, I can make an exception. Go ahead and fill it out with a CNE box, and I will go to bat for you and try to make it happen. It was never made for this conference. Again, all my other conferences, yes, but not this particular one. But I'll see what I can do to kind of magic it for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that, I'd like to kind of briefly introduce our first speaker. Her name is Ginny Funk. She is a keystone person at the Alzheimer's Association here for the South Texas and San Antonio region area. So please help me welcome Ginny Funk.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Glad to be here with you, very much so. I will not be speaking any Spanish. After 2 years at least of college learning Spanish, I unfortunately did not keep up with it, and that was back in the beginning of the early 90s. So, but my role this morning most definitely is to lay some groundwork about Alzheimer's disease and also give you some updates, because we most definitely know more so than ever about the disease and about how many people it affects, and most certainly care. So I definitely want to give you as much new information as I possibly can, but also show how much attention is still absolutely needed towards this disease so that ultimately we can find a cure. I'm Jenny. I do work at the Alzheimer's Association. Next month will be my 14th anniversary, I guess. It's changed a significant amount in that amount of time for sure. Our San Antonio office of the Alzheimer's Association has been open since 1989. And I don't know if I'm supposed to publicly share this, but our executive director is currently in the process of looking for new office space. So although we have been in the medical center over on Louis Pasteur for about the last 15 years, we may very well be moving by the end of this year to another location. So anyway, I think it's kind of horribly ironic, but now I am also personally on this journey with my mom, and I can say that sadly it has made me a better employee of the association because I understand so much more than ever before, for sure. And I definitely feel like, although I work there, I benefit every day from the programs and services of the association. So we really appreciate this opportunity to inform and educate and be a part of conferences, but I also, towards the end, just want to make sure that you are aware of programs and services through the association because they are free, and so many people are touched by Alzheimer's or another form of dementia and yet are not aware of the nonprofit that helps families, no matter whether it's a 2 or 5 year journey or a 20-year journey. We had a board member who lost her mom after having Alzheimer's for 16 years. That's a tremendous amount of time, and really our Nancy in our office, if you know her, she was really with that family throughout that whole process. So, let me jump in here, and I know that if there are questions, I'll be glad to answer. You certainly have fantastic speakers that are coming down the rest of the day after me, so hopefully I can answer anything, but also leave it to others behind me for sure. So, I'm just going to go. There are some videos embedded within this PowerPoint of basics, but in light of time, I'm going to fast forward through these and just kind of give a synopsis. But Dr. Peterson is one who is very heavily involved in Alzheimer's disease research, and he does talk about the fact that, and I'll show some statistics about how completely disproportionate the amount of research that is funded for Alzheimer's disease as compared to the amount of people who have the disease and who are touched by it. So,
in general, we talk about.
I'm going to skip through that. So, bless you. By far, we get this question most definitely from families, but people kind of still joke about this as far as, oh my gosh, I forgot something, that must mean that I have Alzheimer's. So one of our most popular classes that we do is called Know the 10 Signs, Early Detection Matters. Well, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we didn't even use the language of early detection matters with Alzheimer's disease. You certainly hear that about other diseases, but not particularly with this one because we don't have a cure yet, and we don't have a treatment per se to stop it from progressing. But there are now many known things that we do have control of and that we can do. The earlier in the process we can find out whether it's a normal age-related change or if it is actually Alzheimer's disease or another kind of dementia. So we just kind of go through in that class typical age-related type things that really do happen. We I think are all very clear on the fact that on the exterior we go through an aging process. The same thing does happen with our brain as an organ in the body. It does go through an aging process and has some typical age-related changes that are specifically not Alzheimer's disease. So, making a bad decision once in a while. Who does that? I mean, that's, yes, giggle. Hopefully this will not very often, missing an occasional monthly payment. Hopefully that's not a thing that happens too often, but forgetting which day it is and remembering later, oh my goodness. Things like that are very normal and not to be concerned about, particularly as you can see, as long as you remember it later, okay. Sometimes forgetting which word to use, forgetting names, losing things from time to time, those are all normal age-related changes. So again, I'm going to skip through these, but one of the most, I would say, significant changes in the world of Alzheimer's disease that's happened recently and it's going to be a huge influence on what happens going forward, is that typically in the past, the people who advocated on behalf of people with Alzheimer's were the caregivers, not the person themselves. So if you're a caregiver, and if any of you have been caregivers, you know it is a very it's incredible. It does turn into 24 hours a day. So advocacy efforts for people with Alzheimer's haven't always been, I guess you could say, a massive wave of it, because with caregivers, they're busy caregiving, and it wasn't necessarily the person with the disease who was advocating on behalf of themselves. One benefit to early detection and getting to people earlier in the process of the disease and getting a diagnosis earlier is that they can very much be involved in the process. And Joyce has Alzheimer's disease. That's another significant change that we're going to see more and more. People who do speak up and speak out about the fact that I have Alzheimer's disease, and this is what it feels like. This is what I'm going through. These are my needs. We're very knowledgeable about what caregivers need, whether they know it or not. But as far as the person themselves, we are hearing more and more, and it's extremely beneficial because it does allow them to advocate on behalf of themselves. And so Joyce, who's a very young woman, and all of these are real, talks about how for her, one of the first things that she started noticing was not being able to count out change when she was going through the line at a store. And she has a PhD. So for her, it was, I don't know, how can I be so smart on that end, and yet what's the problem? So she was aware of some of the changes that she was going through. So these are the 10 warning signs crammed into just a couple of bullet points. Again, we have a whole class on this where we go through kind of the normal column of these are regular age-related changes that happen and people kind of worry about, but these are actually the warning signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, and I will most definitely dive into the difference between those. So one of the first things that a lot of people still think is that Alzheimer's disease is about memory and just the memory part of the brain, but it affects every part of the brain. For most individuals, it starts in short-term memory, as in, what did you have for dinner last night?
Tacos.
Did you have to think about it first? That was one of the fastest answers I've heard because it's early this morning. How about the night before?
Fish.
Okay, oh, well, she's right on it. So one thing that you would see as a warning sign is if someone was not able to remember, or even just an hour ago, what did you have for breakfast? Or what did you have for dinner last night? And not only not be able to recall it right now, but not be able to recall it at all. So yes, it absolutely affects the memory part of the brain, usually starting with short-term memory first. But the key word is that it disrupts daily life. So if you lay your keys down and eventually you figure out where they are, that's not disrupting daily life. If you're looking at your keys and not able to understand what you use that object for, or what that object is, that it's a set of keys, that's where it's so much more significantly important that it's disrupting daily life. So that's the key thing about memory. A lot of times it'll show up in completing familiar tasks. So one of the things, we won't do it this morning, but think about all the steps that it takes to brush your teeth. Well, actually, there's a lot. You have to find the right room in the home. You have to find the right instrument to put toothpaste on. I mean, we have stories of, we'll come in and find our loved one in the bathroom, and they put toothpaste on a brush, on a hairbrush. What is that? Well, that would be something to pay attention to. So all those steps you start to see are not happening in the correct order. So just being able to plan out things that we do on a daily basis. Confusion with time or place. So in the normal column of that one, okay, what day of the week it is, I don't know why, but for me, Thursday is trash day, so everything's based around that. What day? Okay, that's tomorrow. So today's Wednesday, that's why I figured that out. For someone with true Alzheimer's or some type of dementia, it's confusion about, let's say it's just, fake it here for a second, snowing outside, and they go outside in flip-flops and shorts and a tank top. So confusion about time as in what season it is and what year it is. That it's, when you hear someone talking about 1945 events as if they're happening right now. So it's much more significant. A lesser known one is that dementia and Alzheimer's absolutely can cause trouble with visual and spatial relationships. So if you watch someone, particularly when trying to get in and out of a car or when trying to sit down in a chair, we kind of do that and don't even think about it, but the brain is telling us all along where we are in relation to objects and judging distance. So you'll start to see, particularly in that one, fender benders in the car where people aren't necessarily able to judge distance and ranges. Or visually, they may look like they're reading the newspaper, but they're actually looking at it, but not actually reading and understanding the words. Here's a key one, misplacing things. Well, who does that? I think all of us. The key is the ability to retrace your steps. So I am not a doctor, and I'm definitely not here to diagnose, but we do kind of talk about if you lose something, or if you forget something, or something happens, but you can sit down undistracted with nothing else and replay, okay, when I came in, I had that bag in my hand, and the dog needed out, the phone was ringing, and I needed the restroom, and oh, I threw it in there. The brain's ability to retrace those steps gets very damaged with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So when you can retrace something, that's a pretty good idea that your brain's working good. Decreased or poor judgment, so that one is, okay, in the normal column, making a bad decision once in a while, as in just making a bad decision, or for this, we're talking about poor judgment as in they pick up the phone and someone is saying, I will take care of your house with this, this, and this. All I need is your credit card and the three numbers on the back. That happens, as you all know, way too often, and that is a case of, okay, something is going on with poor judgment, because otherwise we would know not to do that. Changes in mood and personality, we're most definitely not talking about having a bad day here or there, but having significant changes where confusion is just off the chart, or most definitely I think about, just personally in our situation, my mom's anxiety is, I've never seen anything like it. She gets anxious just to leave the front door of the house. So again, it's watching something that's much more extreme, or anger, or one of those things where we'll have family members say, my loved one has never said a cuss word, and now we are shocked at how they're speaking. And that absolutely is that's something to watch for as a warning sign that, okay, something is happening there that could potentially be a warning sign. So just going through those really quickly. So dementia, by far, one of the most commonly asked questions that we do get is, what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's disease, how are they related? And we kind of use it in a couple of different ways through hearing, a couple of ways neurologists have described it, but dementia is the umbrella term, and it's actually not a medical diagnosis, even though, how many people have you come across that have dementia, but not necessarily anything else behind that? I'm in this field, and I've gone to 3 neurologists, and we're still at dementia, severe dementia, but not a diagnosis of which one. So dementia itself, and I think it's actually, I'll go back, but the definition of dementia means that you're having cognitive loss consecutively with interfering with daily life, and it's progressive. So it's much more serious than some of those other normal things we talked about. So it's serious enough to interfere with daily functioning. And it's another word for symptoms. The symptoms with the 10 symptoms that I just went over. So with dementia as the broad umbrella term. We also used an example of, think about cancer. Cancer is an umbrella term, but what kind of cancer is it? Dementia symptoms. What are causing the dementia symptoms? We also call dementia the umbrella term, or another way is ice cream. Think about ice cream as an umbrella term. If you came up and said, well, I'd like to order some ice cream. Okay, well, there's so many different kinds. There are more than 70 things out in the world that cause dementia symptoms. So that's a lot. The most prevalent thing that causes dementia symptoms is Alzheimer's disease. So in the umbrella example, we call that the long handle that comes down from the umbrella of dementia because it causes the most. One thing that is yet another reason for early detection and the importance of that is that there are things that cause irreversible dementia symptoms and things that cause reversible dementia symptoms, as in treatable, symptoms go away, it was not a progressive brain disease. But they, same characteristics. So for example, a reversible dementia, if you have someone who is older and they get a urinary tract infection, sometimes they can look exactly like someone and present as someone who has Alzheimer's disease. Just looks just like it. So getting them to the doctor and finding out, oh my gosh, okay, it's a UTI, treat that, dementia symptoms go away, then we know that was reversible. Sort of hallelujah to that. I mean, that is a treatable, reversible dementia. So going over some of the, I'm going to get into Alzheimer's disease specifically because out of all the dementia that's out there, Alzheimer's disease is at least known to be at least 70% of causing dementia. So that's why you hear about it the most. Sometimes I think about this, the name of the Alzheimer's Association, our legal name is actually Alzheimer's Disease and Related Dementias, Inc. I don't know, it goes on and on, to include all related dementias. So we try to get in the habit of saying Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So when you hear ADRD, that's what we're referring to. You don't want to leave out any of the other irreversible types of dementia, but Alzheimer's is the most prevalent. Second most prevalent is vascular dementia, and that comes in, I think actually it's going to be on a graph here in a little while. And all of these have similar symptoms but progress differently. They have different, really we talk about there's no treatment as of yet to stop the irreversible dementias. There's also Parkinson's disease dementia. So not all, but many individuals with Parkinson's disease are under the umbrella of that causing some dementia symptoms. Huntington's disease, much more rare, but it is a progressive brain disorder. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, otherwise known as mad cow disease. That's real. It's extremely rare, but it does cause a rare fatal brain disease that progresses. Frontotemporal dementia, I'll show you where that one hits, is right up in the front part of the brain, and that is the area where we make decisions. Good decisions, bad decisions, good judgment, bad judgment. So if you have an individual who, for example, and this absolutely happens, walks out of their house with no clothes on and someone finds them, that is an indication of something seriously is going on, and that is just one example of what could possibly be something happening seriously in the brain with the frontotemporal part, because you know they would otherwise not make that decision to do that. So that's otherwise known as Pick's disease. These are all, there's not enough bad words to describe them, nasty, but Pick's disease in particular is very bad because it does the most damage right up in that part of the brain. And we kind of think of it, you have the two little characters, you have the good one and the bad one, and this one really kicks up, making really poor decisions. Lewy body disease is rapidly gaining as far as almost becoming the second most prevalent dementia. And it has to do with, they found abnormal microscopic deposits in brain cells that they call Lewy bodies, and that's another form of progressive dementia. So let me keep going. Oh, Korsakoff syndrome, if you've ever heard of that one. That one is specifically related, and it's more rare, but it is commonly caused by alcohol misuse. So long before coming to work at the association, I worked at an assisted living community. It was all memory care, and we did have a woman who had Korsakoff, and it was very similar to Alzheimer's disease, but being able to track it and talk with the family, and the doctors made that diagnosis that it was actually Korsakoff. Down syndrome dementia. Haven't exactly figured out why, but individuals with Down syndrome have a super high prevalence of later developing Alzheimer's disease. It's unreal. So one good bit of news on that is the National Down Syndrome Group and the National Alzheimer's Association are now doing a large research study together to try to find out more information about why that is. Another thing about just dementia symptoms in general is that it's absolutely more than memory loss. It affects the language part of the brain. So in some individuals, it doesn't show up as short-term memory loss, but it shows up as repeating the same question. I just answered that question, and then they ask it again. Well, where are we going? Well, we're going to the mall to get something for your granddaughter. 2 minutes later, well, where are we going? Where are we going? Or being in the middle of a sentence or a conversation and just saying things or answering something that has nothing to do with what was just asked. Sometimes that's referred to as a word salad. So that's one of those symptoms that can show up. Thought, just thought processes of how, I think about also on this one, time. Time and thought process are no longer in a kind of rational straight line, that they get jumbled. Navigation, watching someone who maybe does start to shuffle more, or maybe they are on, you can watch changes in how they will come up to approach and sit down in a chair, and rather than sitting in it, they'll slip and fall because they're not able to judge the distance between where they are and how to basically sit down in a chair. Personality and mood, and then planning and organizing. That's a huge one. Say it's the person who's always done Thanksgiving dinner, and this year it's, no, I don't want to do that. What do you mean you don't want to do that? Let's do something else. Or, no, I don't want to, kind of stopping usual things that they've always done. So if they've always loved to cook, or just the steps that it takes to walk into the kitchen to prepare a basic meal, stopping doing that. One of those warning signs I kind of skipped over is withdrawal. That's a warning sign of, okay, my world's getting smaller and smaller, and I'd rather than going to the usual group that I go to, everyone seems like they're cheating, they're starting to get mad at me, I just don't want to go. I'll just stay right here in my little world. So those being dementia symptoms, kind of went over this, but there's, it might be hard to see, but out of all the dementias, so in the United States, we know that at least 5.4 million people have Alzheimer's disease. That equates into 15 million people are caregivers. And of that, and worldwide, Alzheimer's, we now know, is up to 44 million people worldwide have Alzheimer's disease. So 70% of dementias, Alzheimer's, vascular, and this is, you can see this chart is old. Vascular dementia as well as Lewy body are really the second most prevalent, and then all of the others make up the rest. So they are more rare, with Alzheimer's being the most common. Mild cognitive impairment is something that is getting more, it is being researched. You'll probably hear about it more later today, but it's recognizing symptoms that maybe you and family members notice but it's not necessarily interfering with daily life or showing up on, not showing up on a test, to where you know something's going on, and not affecting daily life, and kind of looking at, is that the precursor to then later developing Alzheimer's disease? I almost have a great feeling you're going to hear about this more later today, as far as the latest research on whether individuals who end up having mild cognitive impairment, whether that then leads to later having Alzheimer's disease. So just specifically about Alzheimer's itself, it is a brain disease, and so we talk about it is not a normal part of aging. While age is the #1 risk factor, and I'll go over risk factors here in a sec, that means every one of us in the room are at risk for developing Alzheimer's disease, because like it or not, every minute we are aging, and that's the #1 risk factor. Alzheimer's disease is not just, oh, you get a little older and you get a little touch of dementia, or you get a little bit of Alzheimer's. It is a brain disorder that destroys brain cells, and as of yet in research, there's not a way to either reconnect or bring those cells back to life. It is progressive. That's a super hard. Just super hard, because progressive means that, and depending upon other medical type things that are going on, Alzheimer's disease is fatal. Just in the United States, it's going up. It's going in the wrong direction, but it's the 6th leading cause of death in America. And for all the people who are over 65, it's the 5th leading cause of death. We don't have a cure as of yet, and again, it affects over 5 million Americans. We can break it out by state, so we know that there are at least 340,000 Texans who have Alzheimer's disease. What we can't do, and are advised against doing, are trying to break those numbers by county, because when you get it down like that, it loses its statistical validity. I don't know how they work all that out, but so really we can talk about statewide statistics and the incredible increase, because there are 77 million baby boomers right now. And a couple of years ago was the first year that the first round of the baby boomers hit 65. So from here on out, 77 million will just keep continuing, hitting 65, and at that age is where the risk and the prevalence of Alzheimer's really jumps up. Let's see, I'm trying to think of what Steve's talking about. Steve has Alzheimer's disease, and I think for him, he talks about one of the first things he noticed was going to work, and he sat for 2 hours at his desk and didn't know what to do. He just sat there, and he just nothing connected. That was one of the first things that really kind of worried him. So here's a picture of the brain. Front temporal is facing that way. And so we show this picture to, again, show how dementia and Alzheimer's disease affects every part of the brain, not just one part. And judgment and reasoning, that's all that stuff up here. So when we have helpline calls, whether people come in our office or they call, we always try to mail out a basic packet. And a handout that we put in every one of those says, "Let us not reason." And it's examples of really not reasoning with someone with Alzheimer's or related dementia, because it just does not work. Their brain does not have the capacity to reason. So we also show, not to get off track, but another thing that we show is, if you've ever heard of retrogenesis, well, that's basically putting a childhood development scale from birth to about 20-some years of age, and the stages of Alzheimer's disease, and putting them next to each other, and they're so similar, but Alzheimer's is going in the other direction. So it's not about treating someone like a child, but it is about understanding that cognitively, they are not able to reason like before. Think about as the brain develops as a child, trying to reason with a child, get them to do something. You don't do that. You just let's go, we're going, rather than, would you like to take a bath? Would you like to, would you like to go to bed? That kind of thing. So, so it absolutely affects that part of the brain. Language, the sense of temperature, that, safety issues are something that significantly start to worsen for someone with Alzheimer's disease for so many reasons, but just not being able to understand super hot water or pain, maybe not necessarily being able to describe any pain that they're in, that language part of the brain being affected, hearing, so we hear that a lot. Well, he just can't hear me. I ask him to do something over and over and over, and he just can't hear me. We've got to get his hearing checked. Well, it is a good idea to get hearing checked, because it may not be a hearing problem per se, but a brain lack of understanding of what it is that you're asking me to do. So that's a big one. Vision, judging distances, watching how someone may be on a light floor and they might walk up to the edge of maybe a dark carpet or something, and you maybe see them go like that. So they look as if they think it's a step down. And then just basic functions, like the brain being able to tell the body how to swallow food, and really, of all the organs in the body, the brain is telling everything else really what it's doing, so it really impacts and changes everything. So this one's super hard to see, but we do have pictures like this, and sometimes we'll show them to families, particularly when they come in and they're just insisting that their loved one is doing this to drive them crazy, to be manipulative, I understand wholeheartedly. I absolutely have had times where I have to leave the room. It's like, it's so mad and so frustrated, and then I have to go, okay, she's not doing this on purpose. This is not something that she has control over. The brain literally goes through a shrinking process as the disease destroys brain cells. So that one's a healthy brain, and you can see the significant difference in someone with severe Alzheimer's disease. And that's not, okay, someone passes away and then suddenly this happens to their brain. This happens to their brain progressively. Another, I think, actually, bless you. I kind of go through this quickly, but we have another thing on all the different stages of Alzheimer's disease, and the association breaks it out into early, middle, late. Doctors have a 7-point scale. I've seen some that even get way more specific than that. But one of the important things, and I think particularly if you haven't necessarily been on this road or know someone with Alzheimer's, is there's still a perception outside of the world of Alzheimer's that Alzheimer's disease, someone who has it, is in the late stages, and they're laying in a nursing home and really can't do very much. Whereas every single person who has Alzheimer's disease started in an early stage. They all started in an early stage. Sometimes life events can make things go very, very, look like as if they're progressing very rapidly, but what that really means is that there are many people among us who have Alzheimer's who are still working, who are still driving, who are still taking care of kids, families, just all kinds of things. So, but important to note that the progression of this is what causes things to happen as this goes along. It is a brain disease, and not just, oh, she's just being more of herself. That's just her. Kitty's husband has Alzheimer's disease, and she just tells a couple stories about some of their first alarming symptoms that they saw, that he just was not doing very well. Okay, so risk factors. So lots of research still continuing on this, because there's still no known one cause of why does someone get Alzheimer's disease. There's one thing we know that's very specific, but it's more rare. So number one is age, which means this is the best way I've heard it described. Everyone in the room is at a 20% risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. We're all aging. Specifically, if you hit age 65, from there on up is when the numbers really skyrocket. Okay, so women. The incident in the past, it's been that the incidence, there are 2/3 more women than men who have Alzheimer's disease. And that was really summed up because women live longer and age is the #1 risk factor. But now they're looking at much more specifically other reasons why that might possibly be. The answer's still out on that. Down syndrome, again, is one that's a very high percentage of individuals with Downs end up developing Alzheimer's disease. So family history, another about most common question that we get asked. I have it in my family. Does that mean that I'm going to get it? What about genetic testing, etc.? So if you have a family history, you then are at about a 30% risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Well, that's not anywhere near 100 or 90 or 80 or 70. And what we now know more than ever is that absolutely what happens from the neck down has an influence on what's going on with the brain. So now diabetes is linked with individuals having a then higher prevalence of Alzheimer's disease. So that is very significant. Heart disease is now linked. That makes it very significant. That ups your risk. Hypertension, that's another one. Let's see what else. Okay, so let's just look at American statistics. 5.4 million Americans. Of all of those people, there is something called familial Alzheimer's disease, and that one has been isolated where they really can truly, they have very specific genes, and it is hereditary. Less than 4% of all those millions of people who have it have familial. And those individuals, most of the families in that less than 4% have a loved one who had Alzheimer's disease younger than 65. So for example, last year, we had an individual who came into our office who was diagnosed, and he's 44. Rare, but absolutely. And so his family would be one that doctors and researchers would be very interested to just find out, if at all possible, if there were specific genes that might actually be contributing to that. So that's how it works. You are at a higher risk if you have a family member, but that absolutely does not mean that you're going to get Alzheimer's disease. The flip side of that is that we don't have a way, we can't use the P word, there's no way to prevent anyone from getting Alzheimer's unless you have that gene. Did anyone see the movie Still Alice? She fell into that very specific percentage of familial Alzheimer's. So one of her kids wanted to get the test and find out, and one absolutely didn't. Such a personal choice. The thing about genetic testing is, unless you're in that, you're not going to walk out yet with, you're going to get Alzheimer's. It's just not there yet. It's also, it hasn't been that long ago that doing research studies on the brain while someone's living, that's just think about that.
Yeah.
In the past it was, okay, the only way you can get a diagnosis is after death. Well, now with improvements and with doctors who specialize in this field, it can be up to a 98% accurate diagnosis while someone is living, not after they've passed. So things have certainly progressed, but again, things that are going to change this disease, people who have Alzheimer's disease speaking up, finding one diagnostic, coming up in science with one diagnostic test that you can walk into the doctor and find out, you take it like other diseases and you have it or you don't, and also a prevention or a cure. Okay, so one of the things we just talked about, it is really important to find a knowledgeable and a good doctor, and it's nothing about doctors, it's just that having a gerontologist or a geriatrician, a neurologist, people who specialize in this have so much more at their fingertips. I'll just give an example. Again, I'm in this world. I've been in it for a long time, and my mom's primary care doctor, she has full capacity. She can make her own decisions. I mean, I have journals full of examples of safety issues and things that are happening, and we'll go in the doctor's office and she can't answer his questions. She looks right at me to do it, and yet we walk out and he says, "Oh, she's fine." That's not helping.
Yeah.
So when I have a neurologist saying it's severe dementia. So it really is important to find someone who is experienced. I will say we don't have an abundance. The doctors that we do have, fabulous. But we are not necessarily in an area where we have enough. We have sister chapters all over the United States. And we have a helpline, an 800 number, where anybody can call at any time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And our contact center is staffed, and there's always master level clinicians on hand. And they will call us and say, we had a call from your area, and there's nothing in the database where we can send them to a diagnostic center. So we go, well, yeah, because, for example, some of our sister chapters in Florida, they have diagnostic centers there, which I wish I could check them out, but where you literally can go in and it's sort of like one-stop shopping. Everything's all together, and you can come out of it with, you had this done and this done and this done, and yes, you're looking at Alzheimer's, or no, it's not. It's something else, or it's treatable. We don't necessarily have that in San Antonio, so it can be difficult to get a diagnosis. Again, there's not one test, so it's not a simple thing. There's quite a lot of moving pieces and parts. Another thing, think about childhood development. Something that's been in our brain, or at least hopefully for a really long time, are social skills. The ability to go back and forth. Hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Wasn't the weather kind of yucky yesterday, but boy, last Saturday, it wouldn't go like that. What do you think about the rain today? And just kind of going back and forth. So if a person goes into the doctor's office because you insist that they do, but you're not sharing your version of everything that's happening, they're fine. Something's wrong with the rest of my family, but I'm fine. I don't know what I'm fine, everything's fine, I'm taking care of myself, everything's going great. Because I can go back and forth for a good 10 minutes on, no, I've been fine. I'm good. Everything's good. Everything's good. So it's also really important. I better wrap it up here. But it is really important to make sure that family, if at all possible, are part of that process so that they can share. Well, actually, the lit stove was on. We went to Target, a couple hours, came back. There it was. It got kind of shrugged off. Well, see the color of the flame? That's not dangerous. It's no big deal. Well, actually, very dangerous. Or just all those kind of things can come from family sharing. So going in prepared with, these are the things that I'm noticing, and I'm just wondering, should we be concerned? Any other health problems? Certainly, medications can cause the interaction of so many medications in one person can cause dementia-like symptoms, so that would be something to absolutely look at. Again, lots of things, but looking at medical history, finding out if there is any family history. There are a lot more things now than just the mini mental status exam to be able to cognitively find out what's happening with someone. Typically, the MMSE was always more about your memory loss, more so than your executive functioning in the front of your brain on, can you make a plan? Can you make a plan of, if the house is on fire, can you do the steps of what it takes to get, that's an extreme example, but a physical examination to find out vitamin B deficiency, Thyroid issues can cause dementia symptoms. So all of those things should be checked out for sure. A psychiatric evaluation. One thing we talk about is everything leading up in life to this point of even maybe diagnosis, it's not like it goes away after that. So whatever family dynamics were there or whatever other issues were there carry right into this. And then interviews with family. Okay, so this one we just kind of, if the diagnosis is Alzheimer's or another irreversible dementia, there's so much that goes into the emotional part of this for the person as well as for a family and for the caregivers. Certainly anger, we see that a lot. I would say that denial, particularly with this disease, runs very high, but that also keeps people from going to the doctor, finding out what's really happening. Although there are not treatments to stop Alzheimer's, there are FDA-approved medications. You may already have all this, know all this, but I love how a doctor described these medications. They treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So think about if you have a bad knee and you go to the doctor and you get one of those awesome shots, and so for the rest of the day you can walk better, the rest of the month or 3 months, or you get that awesome cream and you just get through each day better, but it didn't take care of the underlying cause. That's what those FDA medications can do for a lot of people. Help with just the getting through the day-to-day symptoms, but not stopping the progression of the disease. They're also much more helpful when given earlier in the process and not so much middle and later stages. I'm sure that'll come up later. Early, middle, and late stages, again, sometimes we'll have family members say, well, what do you think? Is she at level 5 or 6? Or, well, really, that number, at least from our perspective, the importance of that is what you're doing on a daily basis in the care of that person at wherever they are. So not necessarily the number assigned, but I'll just give a super fast example. In the place where I worked, we had some individuals who could still eat with finger foods, and families had a problem with that because they felt like it was a dignity issue. So we explained that when your brain is developing, you don't go from someone feeding you. We do this class. I don't know if you have ever experienced having someone feed you, but wow, it's a very eye-opening experience. But when you're growing up, you don't go from directly having someone feed you to knowing how to use a fork and a knife. Generally, in those stages, you're eating with finger foods. And it's okay to be able to do that because you're feeding yourself. It's not someone else doing it. So with that, it's really looking at each person and just figuring out what their capabilities are and what can they still do for themselves, more so than just thinking, okay, they can't do the fork and the knife, so automatically that means that then we're going to be feeding them. Dr. Parker really talks about the importance of planning early, that, again, with this disease, a lot of times you wait until a crisis happens, and then it's, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? So we do classes on legal and financial, and as of last year, Alzheimer's disease is the most expensive disease in America. And there's so many reasons for that. But being able to have those conversations, all the legal issues that can come up, just planning early, which it's hard. I mean, we're not necessarily a society that wants to talk about elderly issues necessarily or what we're planning after death. But with this disease, there comes a point where you won't be able to have those conversations and find out someone's wishes if you wait too long. So earlier the better, for sure. So planning early, growing a support system, for sure. Okay, these are the approved medications. I think the last approved medication was in 2006. Holy caroli, that is a long time ago. It takes millions and millions of dollars for medications to make it through the pipe of being approved. but we are long overdue, and not just for some kind of pill, but some sort of major breakthrough with Alzheimer's disease, for sure. Dr. Peterson again. So I have to take 2 seconds and quickly talk about the 2 reasons that we don't yet have a cure for Alzheimer's disease, as we are told by researchers, are 2 things. Money. The amount of money that gets spent on other diseases has therefore caused death rates from breast cancer, heart disease, prostate cancer, HIV/AIDS to all decline. All those death rates are on the decline. That's a celebration. In the last 10 years, death rates from Alzheimer's disease have skyrocketed 68%. So right now, because of awareness and all kinds of other things, it's so disproportionate the amount of money that gets put towards Alzheimer's research and funding research studies. The studies are there, it's the funding. So the other thing is, the second thing that's missing are human beings to participate in clinical trials. Whether you have Alzheimer's, don't have Alzheimer's, don't have it in your family, do have it in your family, that is one thing. Texas has some, and San Antonio has some amazing clinical trials happening, but how do you even find out about them and just what they entail? There's now a program that the association developed a couple years ago now, and it's called Trial Match, where researchers dump their studies into a database. The public can go in and put their information into Trial Match, and basically it'll show you, just based on initial information, you may qualify or get more information about this clinical study. So I kind of make a joke that, there's only so many mice. It's true. There are not enough human beings participating in clinical trials, so always got to push for that. Last but not least, just a couple of things about the association. We do a lot of classes all the time, everywhere. We do classes for families. We do classes for professionals. We do an annual educational symposium every year as well. It's on May 15th. Write that down. We also love working with Mark and Joe on that one. And we have our keynote speaker is the head scientific officer for the association, who's coming to San Antonio to talk about what is happening specifically in the world of research, and she's awesome. We have our 24-hour helpline. We have a table downstairs where Marie put out some of our brochures. I can't more highly recommend, please grab one or grab one of my cards so that if you know anyone who is dealing with this, that they can get support. They can call 24 hours wherever they live, and we can start getting them into resources. We have support groups. It's really helpful to be able to talk about this with someone who gets it. When I talk about, oh, I just get so mad at her and then I just feel so guilty about it, being able to share those stories is very, very helpful for caregivers. We have great resources on our website, and then all kinds of information about safety services. Wandering. Over 70% of individuals with Alzheimer's will wander at some point, and really bad things happen when that happens. And driving. The whole issue of driving is huge related to this topic. So we have a lot of support services for that. We have advocacy. Thanks for showing our walks. Our Walk to End Alzheimer's are our national events that we invite people to come to. Yes, we raise money. The Alzheimer's Association is the largest contributor of research funding other than the federal government. So we raise money so that what we do locally in chapters is free, and what we give pieces and parts to is our research studies. We've even had doctors here in San Antonio who have gotten grants through the association for research. So super exciting. So Walk to End Alzheimer's. I'm getting on a plane to go to Washington, D.C. Watch the news next week, because over 1,000 advocates are traveling to D.C. It's our time to advocate to our elected officials about more research funding for Alzheimer's disease, and we have more people than ever who have Alzheimer's who are traveling, so we always need advocates to help us. We also are going, I'm talking super fast, We also are going to our state capitol in Austin on April the 2nd. We need as many people to get on the bus and join us for that, as many advocates as we can, so that we can storm Austin with our priorities. And then one more thing, the longest day, the true longest day of the year is in June, on June 21st. And we do special things that day to honor caregivers who have the longest day every day. And that's it, and I'm out of time. That's some phone numbers. We have our local office. Any questions? I know I'm totally out of time, but is there anything I can answer super fast?
No, we've got time for a couple of questions. Anybody have
Okay.
questions?
Question, the driving issue.
Yes.
Because the physicians cannot order that anymore, that they, request that they do not drive. That is such a big issue. Is there any other avenue that can legally be done?
Not as of yet. So when we're talking with families, we kind of go through the steps of, have you tried this? Certainly if you ask, again, you want to stop driving? Oh, cuss word, absolutely, no. So then kind of scenarios of, okay, the next step in how you have that conversation, the next step. And if you reach the point where your loved one is repeatedly getting into accidents and not turning over the keys, then you as the caregiver for that individual are responsible for the automobile, not the person. So like we'll have families say, but we took his driver's license away. Well, that's not going to stop him from driving. We talk about disabling the car. We talk about everything as a cue to someone with Alzheimer's. The door, that's a cue. Go out it. So if they're looking out the window and the car's right there, that's the cue that, oh, let's go get it. If you could move it. I mean, we try to come up with all kinds of suggestions. Legally, all I know is I have heard of instances where if you are the family and you know that your loved one is impaired and they go out and get in an accident and hurt or kill someone else, you could potentially be liable. So our role is to help with how do you take that away from someone knowing that it's their independence and they're going to be mad at you and all just through that whole process of, okay, but if they got in a really bad accident, I mean, we had 3 daughters and their dad had gotten in such a bad accident, him driving with Alzheimer's, that their mom almost died. And they were sitting on our couch in our office going, when do you think it's time that we really kind of have to do, Nancy and I about fell over, and but I mean, we really were like, you're well past it, and it's amazing that your mom didn't, and they hurt other people in 2 other cars. So our role is to try to help with, these are tips along the way, and then here's kind of some of the last steps. We have videos. If you go to alz.org and put /driving, we've got videos on there of families having very difficult conversations and that kind of thing. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. What about, I guess you can say those that come from mental illness as well? How can you separate that to be able to acknowledge that they're suffering from?
That is very tough. We actually, at our symposium in May, that's going to be one of the topics of how, what do you do in that occasion where there are mental illness issues and a brain progressive deadly disease, and just what do you do in that situation, and what kind of treatments and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a tough one.
Okay.
So what I would do is say, call our 800 number and tell the situation, and they can give you all kinds of suggestions.
All right. Thank you so much, Ginny. Appreciate it.
I'll stick around.
Yeah, stick around. Back around.